So, I'd like to start by playing a game that I play with my little toddler friend. It's called Opposites. Now, he pronounced it auspicites, so I always have to think really hard when I say the word opposite now. But, tall and short are... Good, I need some audience participation. Big and small are... Hot and cold are... Up and down are... Or are they? If I ask you the question, do you want to do this? You could respond with, yeah, I'm down with that. Or you might respond with, I'm up for that. And then in that context, they actually mean the same thing. It's a little bit confusing, but we have to remember that context matters. And so, for a toddler, yes, we teach them about these opposites, and it's pretty concrete, but we know as adults and even as young people that it's not always that way. The context matters. To illustrate this again, I want to tell a little story. Once upon a time, there lived 6 blind men in a village. One day, the villagers told them, "Hey, there's an elephant in the village today." They had no idea what an elephant was, so they decided, even though we would not be able to see it, let's go and feel it. All of them went to where the elephant was, and every one of them touched a part of the elephant. "Hey, the elephant is a pillar," said the first man who touched the leg. "Oh no, it's like a rope," said the second man who touched the tail. No, it is like a branch of a tree," said the man who touched the trunk of the elephant. "No, it is like a big fan," said the fourth who touched the ear of the elephant. "It is like a huge wall," said the fifth man who touched the belly of the elephant. The last said, "It is like a solid pipe," the one who touched the trunk, or who touched the tusk of the elephant. They begin then to argue about the elephant, and every one of them insisted that they were the most right. It looked like they were getting agitated. A wise woman passing by saw this. She stopped and asked them, "What is the matter?" They said, "We cannot agree on what the elephant is like." Each one of them told what they thought the elephant was like. The wise woman calmly explained to all of them, "All of you are right. The reason every one of you is telling a different story is because each of you touched a different part of the elephant. So actually, the elephant is all of these things." Now, the men who experienced this elephant, each one of them had a very narrow, small view of what an elephant was. We might think they were foolish, but we do this all the time. In the words that we speak or write, they are based on a very narrow experience of life. There's nothing wrong with that. We can only experience so much as limited human beings. And even when something seems very crystal clear to us, it's not so clear after all. Technically speaking, our words are merely stand-ins for the concepts and ideas that we see and experience. For instance, a young child learning to communicate might want something and they will point at it and say, "That." Later on, they might say, "E-O-E-O," because that's the sound that the siren makes. Later, they learn a more complicated word, fire truck. And at some point, They may even learn that there are different kinds of fire trucks. I had no idea how many different kinds of fire trucks there were until I started reading the Berenstain Bears. Now, we use many different words to express ourselves. But when we express ourselves, it's not always heard the same way that we mean it. Like the men in the story, we are posed with the question, who is then right? We are geared to understand ourselves and those most like ourselves. But in this age that we live in, this age of interconnection, where we are connected with people of various groups, various races, various languages, much like at that day in Pentecost, is it the faithful thing for us to do to just assume that everyone thinks the way we do? At one time, the world was small. It was tribal in the sense that our survival depended on all of us being the same. But now our world is global. It is varied. It is diverse. And our survival is no longer based on being the same. Perhaps it's the opposite. Our ability to connect with various persons of different backgrounds, various people groups, is what will help us survive most. Now, what I'm talking about today is stewarding our words. Because words can be very powerful. Many words have been spoken today, words of dedication, words of prayer. And I used to believe that words could be objectively known. But I've experienced enough of life to realize that it's not true. Just reading a word in a dictionary is not enough. In fact, in the scientific worldview, merely observing something, participating in it, using it, can change the reality. And so in this age of interconnection, we must consider how we steward our words. We must be mindful of what we write and say. We must be mindful of the other who is speaking to us, what they have experienced, where they're coming from. And I think this all comes out of these ideas that we just heard in the scripture from 1 Corinthians. If we are to be one body, we have to be mindful of the other. So let's look at this text a little more closely. This first part, in the first few verses, the body does not consist of one member, but of many. Paul introduces this image of God's people being like a body. We belong to each other, not in an ownership sense, but we're connected. We need each other. We complete each other. We need to be connected to navigate this world. But we often get stuck in these traps of thinking that one part of the body is less or one part is more. As he goes on, he reminds us that that is not true, saying, if the whole body were an eye, where would hearing be? If the whole body were hearing, where would the sense of smell be? But as it is, God arranged the members in the body, each one of them as he chose. If all were a single member, where would the body be? This takes the image deeper. Just as each of the parts of the body have their own role, so do believers in the church, and so do churches throughout the world. There's an arrangement, but it's not always up to us. Also, we have to remember that we're not all meant to be the same. So when we go out and share our faith, when we talk about our values and our hopes, we don't have to make everyone the same as us. In fact, we can embrace the differences and realize that each contributes to the whole picture. And in this last part that I want us to think about today, he really drills it down to how it connects to the point that I'm trying to make. As it is, there are many members, yet one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. On the contrary, the members of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. And those members of the body that we think less honorable, we clothe with great honor. And our less respectable members are treated with greater respect. Whereas our more respectable members do not need this. But God has so arranged the body, giving the greater honor to the inferior member, that there may be no dissension within the body, but the members may have this same care for one another. If one member suffers, all suffer together with it. If one member is honored, all rejoice together with it. Here is where I think this metaphor connects with what we're talking about today. If we are truly to steward this gift of words that we have to break free of this tendency to privilege whatever we most consider normal. As part of a privileged class of people in this nation and perhaps in the world, we have to release this desire to see ourselves as superior, or in the more sort of benign way, we call ourselves normal, as if everyone else is abnormal. In my discipline of biblical and theological studies, you can see how this negatively plays out because there's no adjective before those words. In Latin America, they might write liberation theology. For women, might write feminist theology. African American women writing womanist theology. But why is there no label in front of the theology that I do? Or maybe there should be. Maybe we need to let go of this thought that we are the most normal, or that we are objective, and value all the stories that are out there. I think this is especially appropriate on the day of Pentecost. At Pentecost, God performed a miracle to show how things could be. And the miracle was not that everyone spoke the same language. I think we often think that the world would be perfect if we all just spoke English. The miracle was actually that they all understood each other in their own native languages. Which points back to the story of Babel in the Old Testament, when it was said that people could accomplish anything if they worked together in understanding. But I don't think this story in Pentecost is an excuse for us to just wait for God to do it. God has given us what we need. God has given us an intellect. God has given us eyes to see and ears to hear. God has given us the internet, Google even, that we may learn and deepen our understanding. God has given us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that hopefully, and I know this is cheesy, but hopefully we can listen more than we speak. In how we steward our words, not just being about the words that come out of us, but the words that we allow to come into us. I was challenged when Drew Hart was here in February. He told this story of this cup. He was sitting with a pastor, probably much like myself, white male, Drew being an African American male. And the other pastor said, I can see what's on my side of the cup. I just need to know what's on your side of the cup. And vice versa. And Drew said, no. I can see what's on my side of the cup, but I also know what's on your side of the cup. Because for me, as a marginalized or less privileged person, in order for me to survive in the world, I have to know what's on your side of the cup. But you, as a privileged person, do not have to know what's on my side of the cup. I felt really challenged by that because I've never had to know what was on Drew's side of the cup to do well in the world. But I don't have to stop there. Drew's encouragement to us at that time, and I will repeat now because I'm not about reinventing the wheel, his encouragement was simply to read the literature, encounter the art, and listen to the speeches and words of those outside of our silo, outside of our normal group of people. There are plenty of ways to do this, plenty of places that you can find the art, the literature, the poetry of other people groups. I hope this week and as you go forth that we can encounter these. And if you need suggestions, you know where to find me.